I am gonna stop sharing. So I am Kasryn. I am a licensed mental health therapist specializing in sleep. And as you might imagine, when people are working on sleeping well, executive function comes into play. And executive functioning coaches have been extremely helpful and part of my collaboration with clients. So I am very excited to introduce Jessica and Della of Encompass Services. Jessica Shore, the founder and owner of Encompass, and Della is Encompass's Director of Student Services. Together, they bring over 15 years of experience providing executive functioning support to adolescents, parents, young adults, adults with ADHD, ASD, anxiety, and learning differences. So thank you so much, Jessica and Della, for joining us today and sharing your wisdom. I'm really excited to hear this presentation today and yeah, to learn more about resting without guilt, especially this time of year. So
Especially.
I will let you take it away.
All right, thank you so much. So I'm going to share my screen and jump in. Give me just 1 second to get set up. So yeah, we are so excited to be here today. As Kasryn said, at Encompass, we focus on all things executive functioning. So as you can imagine, there is a lot we could unpack today, almost like a buffet of options, so to speak. But we're going to focus on the foundations of executive functioning and how ADHD and anxiety can impair it, motivation, what props it up and what depletes it, and as an extension of motivation, procrastination, productivity, and how to rest without all of that nagging guilt. So, as part of this conversation, we'll go through, sorry, that's like it. We'll go through ES strategies that help us to both emotionally and practically toggle the balance between the fantasy of doing enough and resting. So, part of why we're so excited to talk to you is because we all, for various reasons, really do struggle to balance doing enough with resting enough. And I think this, as you said, Katrin, is seasonally quite relevant. We're nearing the holiday season, which is always hugely disruptive. It's disruptive to our routines. Our tasks shift and also increase. We have a lot more to do. Our expectations may become less clear and therefore more anxiety inducing, and family stressors never help. So, Della and I are hearing on repeat. I thought I was going to get so much done before the holidays. I have so much to do before Thanksgiving. And also, I wish that I was able to relax more during Thanksgiving break. I'm tired, but I should get more done when I have that time off. So, that balance between doing and not doing, and resting and not resting, is at the heart of what we're going to discuss today. And before we do, I want to share two critical frameworks that are going to guide our conversation. First, executive functioning is not synonymous with productivity. Most people come to us and say, if I had stronger EF, I could do so much more. But executive functioning is not about doing, it is as much, if not more so, about resting. So the second point is that rest, in my opinion, is the highest echelon of executive functioning. If you can rest without guilt, you have mastered all 5 core skills we teach at Encompass. So I want you to hold on to that as we dig into those skills. Okay, let's do it. There are many ways to discuss executive functioning, but at Encompass, we define it as the ability to execute and function, to meet all tasks and responsibilities in all buckets of our life, strategically and with low stress. So this means without procrastination, without the overwhelm, without the hyperfocus and rumination. Say a little head bobbing. So people at any age with low executive functioning struggle to keep track of everything they have to do, break down tasks that cannot be done in one sitting, prioritize successfully or strategically, utilize their time wisely or estimate time successfully, stay organized and keep track of their materials, pay attention or work for sustained periods of time without getting distracted or bored, manage their feelings around tasks that can be overwhelming or intimidating, context switch between tasks or modes of rest and work, and lastly, procrastinate and hyperfixate, making it very difficult to feel either fully productive or fully rested. And I go like this because we kind of move in and out of behaviors of doing and not doing. So most people seek support when these difficulties become age specific, showing up in ways that are louder, more disruptive, and carry real emotional and practical consequences for that stage of life. For teens and young adults, their responsibilities often fall into a single high pressure bucket, school. So their executive functioning difficulties tend to look like a lot of later missing work, often submitting work late, partially completed, or not at all. Messy backpacks full of crumpled papers and disaster zone rooms, studying inefficiently, or not knowing how to study. Defensiveness, especially around receiving help, resulting in inconsistent or low grades, and a tendency to escape, especially into screens as a coping mechanism. As adults, oh my God, our responsibilities are broader. We juggle work and home life and finances and relationships and more. So the fallout of weak EF often shows up as many things, but often flooded inboxes and unresponded emails, difficulty self-advocating and delegating, whether at work or at home, starting new tasks before finishing old ones, messy homes, especially full of piles and clutter, difficulty with multi-step, mundane chores. Think laundry, dishes, mail, boring, ongoing, multi-step, and often have much higher levels of decision fatigue and shame. What makes it even more challenging is that as adults, we don't have clear metrics like grades or gold stars to tell us we're doing a good job. So it becomes so much more subjective and personal, making it difficult to ever feel like we're doing a good job or enough because we don't have clarity around what a good job means, what enough means. So the good news is cultivating strong executive functioning skills mitigates these symptoms. So what are these skills? To start, task awareness, simply keeping track of everything we have across the various buckets of our life: work, home, personal, interpersonal, school. What tools are you using to get it all out of your head? Post-its, apps, to-do lists, planners? Do you make a to-do list and forget to ever check it ever again? So that's the first skill, is task awareness. Our second skill, is currently my personal favorite skill, is the skill of prioritization. This relies heavily on value recognition, and here we draw a lot from acceptance and commitment therapy. Why are we doing one thing at all before another? Is it emotional? Is it easier? Do I like it? Is it practical? Is it less stressful, more urgent, less time intensive? So this is really central to motivation, and we're going to really dive into this shortly. 3, we next need to break down tasks into manageable metrics of success. This is going to be key to our talk today: manageable metrics of success, in order to recognize progress. A task that is practically unmanageable is, again, multi-step. It cannot be done in one sitting and holds a lot of value, a lot of importance to us. Or a task might be emotionally unmanageable, meaning it really stresses us out and makes us feel anxious and overwhelmed or even invoke shame. So the example I always give is taxes, right? It can't be done in one sitting, practically unmanageable, and is very stressful, emotionally unmanageable. So all of us universally avoid our taxes. Fourth, once we've broken down our tasks into the manageable metrics from step 3, we use those metrics to organize our environment and our time. Where should we work? Where should we rest? How do we transition between the two? When do we get a break? How long should we plan to spend on any given task? What are our routines? And something I want to really emphasize is that we never want to talk about when we do something without talking about where we do something. So time management has an environment component. Lastly, and in my opinion, one of the most important skills to this work is one of mindfulness. And we call this reflecting and correcting without judgment. This skill counters rigid thought patterns and encourages flexible thought patterns. It is really easy for us to feel shame around how we move through the world. So it's important to reinforce as a skill that we routinize that we need to pause and reflect on what's working, actually celebrate it, and determine how we want to maintain consistency. Or determine what is most certainly absolutely not working for us, triage why as part of the skill, and correct as needed, all without judgment. So our clients often ask, why am I struggling so much with these 5 skills with my executive functioning? So while all of us can struggle in our own ways, people who have ADHD or are neurodivergent suffer from anxiety and mental health challenges, or have learning disabilities such as processing disorders, dyslexia, or dysgraphia, are just going to have greater challenges around their executive functioning. And one reason that people with ADHD struggle is due to increased difficulty with object permanence. Think out of sight, out of mind. So this is going to make it difficult to hold multiple tasks in mind at one time without getting overwhelmed. So thinking about all the things we have to do and all the things we don't want to do is going to be overwhelming. It also makes it difficult to keep track of materials. If I don't see my planner, it doesn't exist. I don't know where it is. It makes it difficult to keep organized spaces, and it critically makes us prone to time blindness and hyperfixation that exacerbate procrastination. It's like, I have no clue how long I've been scrolling on my phone. Time doesn't exist. There's a second aspect of ADHD, that disrupts our executive functioning, and it's also coexists with anxiety. And these are rigid and binary thought patterns, which is such a clinical sounding mouthful. So I'm going to refer to these as ribbies going forward. It's how we refer to it with our clients to take some of the pressure off. So to start, ribbies perpetuate anxious thoughts about ourselves, such as I'm either good or bad. I'm smart or stupid. If I'm doing one thing wrong, I must be doing everything wrong. It's easier for everyone else but me. There's no nuance. It's binary. But when this binary view is challenged because we aren't rigidly good or bad, it's anxiety inducing. It can make us feel misunderstood and confused about who we are, and most importantly, how we are perceived. And for our purposes, ribbies perpetuate anxious thoughts about how to approach our tasks. For example, there is a right way and there is a wrong way to clean my closet, answer my emails, do this project. And I don't know which is which invokes decision fatigue and means we won't approach it at all. We want to do all of our work in one sitting or not at all. Prioritizing is impossible. Everything is extremely important or nothing is important. There are so many examples about how this type of thought pattern cripples executive functioning and spikes anxiety. But here's really why this matters. While not every person who struggles with their executive functioning has ADHD, you can absolutely be neurotypical and struggle. Every person with ADHD will have symptoms of low executive functioning, and because of that, much higher anxiety. So executive functioning, ADHD, and anxiety are therefore so often discussed in tandem because when we are not able to intuitively manage our tasks with strong executive functioning, we feel like something's wrong with us. We feel shame and we feel anxiety, and more often than not, our motivation collapses and we shut down.
So, speaking of shutting down, let's unpack motivation. Motivation is no doubt a tricky beast, but it's helpful to imagine motivation as a tripod that's supported by 3 foundational pillars. The first are our values, whether or not we feel like the task in front of us is worth it. The second is our executive functioning, right? The skills that we use to break it down and make it feel manageable. And then the third pillar that props up our motivation tripod are our thoughts and our feelings. You can imagine that if all three of these pillars are working together, our motivation, a lot like a tripod, is solid. But if even one of them starts to falter, the motivation tripod crumbles. The first pillar of our tripod is value. Put simply, if we place unhealthy value on our work, we're not going to want to do that work. And the problem is that most of us have either unclear value metrics or multiple value metrics that are in opposition to each other. So, for example, I wanted to go to the gym this morning, but I also wanted to sleep in for another 30 minutes. So what we want to do is we want to invoke our second executive functioning skill, prioritizing based on a clear understanding of our values. And in order to do this, it is helpful to visualize two axes of value, which is what you have depicted there on your screen. The first axis represents intrinsic versus extrinsic value. Intrinsic values refer to the connection between the way that I think and the way that I feel about the task and my motivation to do it. So I need to find the task interesting. I need to feel good about it or take pride in it in order to be moving with intrinsic value. Intrinsic value is the most reliable and healthy form of value. On the extrinsic axis, we're thinking about outside forces that pull us into doing tasks that we might not intrinsically want to do. This can be wanting to impress a coworker or friends, money, punitive consequences. It's a powerful form of value, but it's also the easiest to negotiate. Which leads us to the second axis, too little value versus too much. That is that negotiation. So if something has little value, we might tell ourselves, it won't really matter if I don't do this work today. The consequences aren't that meaningful. Phew, now I don't have to worry about it, right? But on the other hand, if we are ascribing too much value to a task, we might find ourselves in a thought pattern that looks like, it matters so much that I do this and do it perfectly. The consequences are really, really steep for me. And again, find ourselves in a motivation breakdown. So our goal is to establish healthy value around our tasks by appealing primarily to intrinsic motivation and reducing threats around extrinsic motivators. So here's an example for us to put this into practice, right? Let's think about Rahim. Rahim is a successful graphic designer. He's an artist. But he feels really threatened by extrinsic motivators, especially when it comes to big projects. He worries about his coworkers' perception of him. He worries about his boss's feedback. He worries about his job security. And he feels like his work will be judged, and by extension, that he himself will be judged. He's putting his heart on the line when he creates something. It's therefore easier for Rahim to complete lower stakes tasks like researching design ideas. And because of this, he hasn't even started on a big project due next week that he knows will really impact his standing at the company. So understanding where Rahim is, let's discuss how we could support him. First, we want to validate his feelings and rejection sensitivity, right? We also want him to see that his ribbies have flared. He's getting in that rigid and binary thought pattern, so that he can lower the threatening value of his extrinsic motivators. We might remind him that this one project does not define his entire value to the company. We might also remind him that this one project will not derail what everyone thinks of him. We might also encourage him to remember that his colleagues may even experience the same type of insecurity that he's feeling right now, and that they're not all actively waiting in the shadows for him to mess up. Instead, we want Rahim to feel more intrinsically motivated, to work on his project by decreasing shame around extrinsic motivators and by focusing on his desire for a completed project. Once he identifies his path into the project, his executive functioning strategies, he really enjoys the design component of the work. So when he's able to reframe his thinking about value metrics, it allows him to engage more easily. And once we've established healthy value, we rely on the second pillar in our motivation tripod, our executive functioning, and it becomes our primary focus because if you don't know how to approach your work, you likely won't approach that work. Think about it. How many times have you personally had a task, maybe your inbox, a home repair project, and thought, I don't know where to begin. I don't know how long this is going to take. I don't know if I need to call someone. I'm just going to do it later. Challenges such as hyperfixation and object permanence, rigid and binary thought patterns, context switching and resetting in between tasks, and especially decision fatigue, all of the I don't knows, collapse our motivation. Our goal, therefore, is to prop up that motivation by bolstering the executive functioning pillar. Lastly, the third pillar of our motivation tripod is our thoughts and our feelings. As mental health professionals, you know that it is a coping mechanism to turn away from the stuff that makes us feel uncomfortable and overwhelmed, insecure and anxious, uncertain about our approval or our future. Kind of like, I don't want to confront that. Let's apply this to another scenario. So let's think about Logan. Logan is a deep feeling dad with small kids. Due to his ADHD, he struggles with rejection sensitivity and is constantly looking for signs that someone is judging him. He cares deeply about being a good dad, but is often overwhelmed by all of the little decisions he has to make. Should I make lunches first or lay out their clothes for school tomorrow? And the task switching it requires to support his kids, do his work, rest, be a good spouse, it just feels like it is never ending and exhausting. Because he feels like a failure, he shuts down. So, how can we support Logan? Again, we want to validate and normalize Logan's feelings. We also want to remind Logan that just like Raheem, his ribbies have kicked in. This notion of good versus bad, success versus failure, and the higher his anxiety creeps up, the more threatening these binaries have become. Next, we want Logan to define his own personal metrics of success. Ambiguous goals or standards like being a good dad is anxiety inducing. Because what does it even mean to be a good dad? Logan should consider what that looks like from an actionable perspective. We could define it according to actions, like defining 3 things he can do each morning. If I've checked these off the list, I'm on track. Or he might be setting communicative goals, like checking in with his spouse each day while dinner is being made. They can also be reflective, like deciding to start a gratitude journal. The point is that Logan needs to define his intrinsic metrics of success and then utilize executive functioning strategies to act on them. This will feel more manageable and attainable than the vagueness of being a good or bad dad. In summary, in order to prop up motivation, we must first recognize intrinsic values and reduce the threat of those extrinsic values. Then we need to utilize strong executive functioning strategies to reduce decision fatigue, build that path forward. And in doing so, we'll reduce the overall anxiety that we experience. When our motivation tripod is propped up, there's no reason to procrastinate.
Okay, so I want to talk a little bit more about procrastination because this is at the heart of balancing rest, which can feel like avoidance, and doing. So before we dive in, I want to ask you, our audience members, to take a second. I'm going to give you 10, 15 seconds to consider. When you procrastinate, what are the thoughts that bubble up? Do you validate your avoidance? Like, you deserve not to do this right now. It's fine. I'll do it later. Or do you shame spiral? Like, you can't really enjoy scrolling or starting the next episode or picking up your book because your to-do list is like haunting you in the shadows. So take a second and consider that. And maybe consider when you have done enough, how do you know? What does it look like? Is it a feeling? Is it a checked off to-do list? How do you know when you've achieved enough? We just think about it for a few seconds. So keep considering that and just know that these are really tough questions because procrastination is complicated, very complicated. I pause there because I've had multiple sessions today where it's been very powerful, the landscape of procrastination. But procrastination at its core is our tendency to turn away from our work. It is a coping mechanism to manage anxiety. And it shows up when our motivation tripod has collapsed. So here's the point. When we're able to turn away from our work, we get temporary relief from the anxiety that shrouds that work. It's like, ugh, I really don't want to do this right now. I can do it later. It'll be fine. But only when the stress of the consequence outweighs the initial anxiety do we stop procrastinating. I want to say that again. Only when the stress of the consequence, outweighs the initial anxiety do we stop. So that's why people who chronically procrastinate often say that they depend on the stress of a deadline, the consequence, to be able to get started. It's like, oops, it's due tomorrow, and if I don't get it done, I'm going to get huge trouble. Okay, fine, I will finally get started. And this is only compounded by a beautiful ADHD brain that already struggles with object permanence, out of sight, out of mind, time blindness, difficulty task switching, and emotional dysregulation. So let's talk about Tori, for example. She has ADHD, she's a mom of two, and is a full-time lawyer. When she gets home from work, she feels overstimulated and very exhausted. When she looks around her house, she sees how messy it is and feels both ashamed and frustrated. But she doesn't see the value in doing any cleaning because she doesn't have the energy. So she justifies doing nothing. So thinking back to our 3 pillars of motivation, why is Tori procrastinating her cleaning? All 3 pillars of her tripod have crumbled. She has gotten caught up in her ribbies, those rigid and binary thought patterns, and negotiated the value of her chores. There is no value in starting if I can't clean everything. She doesn't have executive functioning strategies for routinizing, prioritizing, and breaking down the big, scary, and most importantly, vague outcome of a clean home. She also carries a lot of shame about her housework, and so confronting cleaning means she has to confront her shame. And that's really hard. So for all of these reasons, Tori procrastinates. But there's an alternative coping mechanism to anxiety other than procrastination. What about compulsive productivity? This is when we turn towards our work. This can look like unrealistic metrics of success, spending too much time on a task, fixating on details to the point of anxiety, and devaluing rest as harmful. And again, beautiful ADHD brain is going to struggle even more due to time blindness, difficulty context switching, and a natural proclivity towards hyperfixation, and ribbies that tell us if it's not perfect, we're a failure. So we must work and work and work to prove that we're perfect. And of course, we know we never achieve that feeling. Bella is a great example of this. She is overcommitted at work and has taken on way too many projects to prove she's committed. She struggles with time management due to her perfectionism and regularly sacrifices her sleep to pull all-nighters to get everything done on time. But she consistently meets deadlines and submits quality work. So other people think everything is fine. In fact, her boss just gave her an even bigger project with a tight turnaround, she masked and said, no problem, but then cried in her office. I should say all of these examples are real clients that we've changed their names. So let's unpack why this is also unhealthy executive functioning. In a very different way, her motivation tripod is just as unstable as Tori's. She has placed too much value on her work, and she feels very threatened by extrinsic motivators, which are both high and rigid. As for her executive functioning, she struggles to prioritize because everything is critical. She spends so much time on her work, often obsessing over small details, that she has deprioritized rest. And her anxiety and adrenaline that fuel these manic sprees, they're making her overwhelmed and vulnerable to the point of burnout. So perfectionism tends to be rewarded, but it is equally unhealthy as a coping mechanism as procrastination. So both Tori, who procrastinates, and Bella, who hyperfixates, are unable to rest without guilt. Tori either feels guilty for not doing her chores, which isn't restful, and Bella doesn't ever allow herself to rest. So part of the reason is that they are either consciously or subconsciously regarding the consequences of their avoidance or hyperfixation. And one consequence is emotional. I like to think about these as the fake audiences who torment us. Sometimes there are the general audiences, the other adults, the other parents, the other friends who are out there doing everything perfectly all the time with pure confidence, and they're mocking us. Or sometimes it's a very real person who we very much hear in our head that we fear are going to judge us. So what if my spouse calls and all I tell her I've done today is one load of laundry and napped? I don't think that's enough. She's definitely going to get mad at me. I need to do more. My boss probably thinks I'm bad because all I got done today was cleaning out my emails, but that was really hard. I can't stop working though. I haven't done enough. So these emotional consequences make it impossible to rest. This is because we, you, me, as a culture, tether our worth to our productivity. The more we fear emotional consequences, the higher our anxiety rises. I'll be rejected, I'll be judged, I'll be deemed unworthy. And at the end, we can talk a lot about rejection sensitivity and these concepts. But when that anxiety peaks because we're afraid of our fake audiences, this tether gets really, really tight. Our worth is tied to our productivity, and therefore we cannot rest. So that tether is never going to entirely disappear. We know that connection between our thoughts and our feelings and our behaviors, but we do want to loosen it. Our worth, all of us, is not correlated to answering emails on time and remembering to text back and keeping a clean home and remembering to move the laundry over, our productivity. At the same time, it is okay for us to want to change the way that we approach those individual tasks. So we need to loosen the tether. I'm okay, and I want to do that differently in order to lower the anxiety and support our motivation tripod. Well, let's be real. There can be very practical consequences to procrastination or hyperfixation. These are extrinsic motivators, the outside forces, people in our life, our jobs, societal standards, grades, that pull us into motivation. And honestly, at times they can be motivating. I don't want to lose my job. I don't want to lose my friendship. But more often than not, even if we do the thing, it's overwhelming and it's a source of shame. So part of quieting the fake audiences and not letting the practical consequences shut us down, so it's emotional and practical, is understanding our shoulds, our metrics of success. When is enough enough? When do we get to rest? But remember our ribbies. Binary thinking will make us feel that if we don't do everything, we've accomplished nothing. And remember, and this is the key point very loudly, unspecific and unactionable goals are often rooted in shame. Remember Logan, he wanted to be a good dad, but he didn't really know what that meant in any clear, actionable, or specific way. That was rooted in shame. So,
This would be a great time if you've got a pen and paper with you to get those handy. And we're going to walk through some executive functioning exercises that center around defining clear and actionable metrics of success so we can avoid those shame spirals that Jessica was just drawing our attention to. As professionals, we all have to toggle our own balance between work and rest. So I'm going to ask you to consider a bucket in your life. And when I talk about a bucket, I mean kind of like a category of tasks. This might be your work bucket, might be an interpersonal bucket, like friends, family, maintaining those relationships. Could be a home bucket, right? I'm thinking about the dishes on the counter in my house right now. Or it might be a personal bucket, meaning what you need for you, exercise, more sleep, creative time. So take a second to choose a bucket. And once you've got that bucket in mind, I want you to think about the tasks that live in that bucket, right? Choose one of those tasks that you want to be and feel productive around. This might be keeping your inbox clean, right? That's probably in your work bucket, but it's a subtask in that work bucket. In the social bucket, it might be texting friends back consistently, right? In the home bucket, it might be putting laundry away when it's done, so it's not just folded on the couch. So here, as we identify these buckets and tasks, we're practicing our first two executive functioning skills, task awareness and prioritization. Now that you know generally what you want to feel productive around, we've chosen one of these tasks, the next step is that we're going to make it specific and actionable. One of our favorite executive functioning strategies is called task versus time. And task versus time aligns with step 3 of our executive functioning methodology, which really refers to breaking down a task into manageable metrics of success. And it allows us to both identify and track the progress that we're making. So think about keeping up with your inbox as part of your work bucket. Where should I even begin, right? If we approach cleaning our inbox using task as our metric of success, we might set a goal that says, I'm going to respond to 5 emails today. And if I do that, I get to feel good. Or if we approach that same item on our to-do list of maintaining our inbox and we approach it according to time, we might say, I'm going to clean out my inbox for 20 minutes. However far I get in 20 minutes is far enough. I get to feel good. So take a second to remember your bucket, your subtask within that bucket, and now consider your manageable metric of success, a way to engage with that task using either task or time. Maybe jot that down on your paper. Now that you've defined a metric of success, consider the 4th step of our executive functioning, organizing our time and environment. To put it differently, we want to identify a work window that delineates when and where you execute on your metric. And here's the beauty of a work window is that it's less about doing the task and more about having permission not to do it, right? So emails are pervasive, right? We get them all day and all night. We always wake up to more emails. It's easy to feel like we always need to be in that inbox. But if we decide that we're going to do one email each time you drink a cup of coffee at your desk, outside of those times, you have permission to do no emails and feel no guilt about it. This is how we establish metrics for productivity and also how we allow for rest. Again, with strong executive functioning skills, we can rest because we have metrics or we have awareness around all of our tasks and have prioritized them based on healthy value metrics. We've also made actionable metrics of success around them. And we're aware of the landscape of our time and know that you can do these tasks at a later or better time to give yourself permission to rest. And we also encourage you to routinize rest outside of your work windows. So think about when and where you can give yourself permission to rest. This could be on a specific day or have it stacked at a specific time, like on Saturdays, I get to rest at home and not worry about my emails. Give you a second there. Think about the when. Finally, we want to remind you to reflect and correct without judgment. This, again, is the fifth step of our executive functioning and really loosens the tether between our sense of self and our productivity. I want to encourage the thinking, I'm good, like I am good, and I also need to do X differently. This is kind of combating that shame spiral. Your guilt around resting might start to creep up, and I encourage you to reflect on these questions. Are my fake audiences rearing their head? Are there real practical consequences of resting right now? If I've lost sight of my manageable productivity goals and my ribbies have started to flare, if I don't do everything, it feels like I've done nothing. Am I in ribby land? And can I identify work windows to do the tasks that I feel that I should be doing when I'm actually intended to be resting? Maybe I don't have to do them right now, right? The fact that my brain is saying emails, emails, emails doesn't mean that I need to send emails right now. I've got a work window in the morning from 9:30 to 10. That's when I'm going to take care of those. In essence, we're asking, can you use your executive functioning skills to give yourself permission to rest? So take a second to kind of put a pin on that. Thank you so much for taking some time to apply these executive functioning skills to some areas in your life and to play a little bit with how this executive functioning methodology, could be helpful in reducing some of that guilt that we feel during times when we're really meant to be carving out space for the very necessary rest that we need. At Encompass, we support teens ages 12 through 18, parents, young adults, and adults, and we offer an array of services depending on age and diagnoses, but a brief overview includes executive functioning assessments, individual 60-minute virtual sessions, executive functioning adult groups, parent consultations to ensure that the entire family system is supported. In the summer, we offer summer and college readiness programs that are both academic and executive functioning curriculum focused. We also offer college orientation sessions to help those who are starting at a new college or maybe starting college for the first time. In addition to our one-on-one services and group services, we've designed a planner meant for our 12 to 18-year-old clients that reinforces our executive functioning methodology. Additionally, we offer collaborative consultations. With client consent, we coordinate care by consulting with their therapist and medication provider. We find that we do our best work when we collaborate really strongly, right? We also offer seasonal workshops like our upcoming end of semester workshop, which is aimed at supporting parents, right? In supporting their children through the end of the semester, building those habits and routines, helping maybe build some empathy for the experiences of their kids and helping them get parenting strategies put together to set them up for success and communication strategies as well. We also do collaborative webinars with practitioners who want to showcase their expertise or services to our Encompass community. And we are so excited that Kasryn will be here speaking to our community this Friday. So we'd love for you to join us on Friday as well. And lastly, we offer trainings and presentations such as this one to clinicians, educators, and parent groups. So thank you again. We have really appreciated this opportunity to get to talk with you. We can open it up now for questions if you have them, and looking forward to our conversation.
Thank you so much. This was such an incredible presentation, and it's fantastic to have you sort of on call as part of the treatment team when somebody's really struggling with executive function and struggling with rest, that there's support there specifically to target that. So yeah, any questions anyone has, this is recorded and we'll be sharing it with people who registered but didn't attend. So keep that in mind when you ask your questions. And if nobody has any questions, I have some I can ask, but I'll open the floor. You can also share in the chat, and that would be separate too from the recording. So if you feel more comfortable putting your question in the chat, I can read it out loud for you.
Thanks, Nia. That's great.
We'll reach out because we'd love to learn more about your work as well, so we can refer your way.
Mhm.
Yeah, just a shout out to the two of you. I've sent clients your way and they've been very happy. So it's great to collaborate with that.
So glad to hear that. Thank you.
Yeah. I think one thing, and I'd love to hear your questions and anybody else's questions, that I feel like, oh, thanks, Nia. I'm doing too many things at once. That have come up a lot, recently. Like, these are very real topics. Those scenarios are real clients. We choose themes that we see pervasively, whether Della is working with adolescents or young adults, or I'm working with adults, they're pervasive. And I think the big part of this is permission. I said at the top that resting without guilt is the highest echelon of executive functioning, because we know everything we have to do. We have awareness of our time, we prioritize, and we give ourselves permission to say, I have the confidence that this will get done. I'm not avoiding it. It's just not meant to happen right now. And that's excellent time management and broader executive functioning skills. When we don't give ourselves permission, we live in that vague, ambiguous, subjective space of, am I allowed? And that's really rooted in shame and identity and a lot of other complex emotional issues, which should be treated with your support. But when we collaborate and offer our executive functioning skills, and you're able to help on the emotional landscape, it's a really powerful transformation we see with our clients.
Absolutely. So my questions are specifically about sleep, since that's my specialty area. So I find a lot of times clients who are struggling with getting to bed on time, there's a couple things going on. Either there's a circadian rhythm difference, so someone's naturally a night owl, but they have those ribbies about that's bad. I should get into bed early. I should be doing this in bed early to bed, early to rise kind of thing, when really their body and their natural chronotype preference is later. Another thing that's really common that I see is they haven't been resting all day and they really need a break, but sleep isn't going to do it for them. So they're doing some leisure time when they could be sleeping. So I'd love to hear you speak to that. I guess it's not so much a question as a very open-ended statement.
No, I think that's really, really relevant to both of our work. We actually, I'm in the middle of doing my adult groups now, and I think our next session is on, well, it's on routines, but morning routines, evening routines, and that's a central question, because really at any age, most of our clients struggle with transitions. So I think part of what's at play, Kasryn, is, like you said, kind of more colloquially called like the revenge sleep procrastination. Like, this is a time for me to rest and I don't want to compromise on that. And that's quite practical and emotional. There's also this notion that late in the evening, we're not expected to answer emails. We're not expected to be productive. And so we have a lot of like lowered pressure. And so we get relief from expectation meeting and shame. And this feels great. And why would I want this to end? There can be a lot of anticipatory anxiety of like, once I go to bed, I have to wake up and confront my day, and I don't want to do that. So there's, yeah, a lot of kind of like emotional relationship to that kind of time management. There's also often with our ADHD and ASD clients, a quite practical executive functioning difficulty. Like, I have truly lost track of time and I didn't know it was 1 a.m. A lot of difficulty with context switching. I have a client who's like, she's like, I can't turn the TV off. And the idea of all the micro decisions to make, well, should I set coffee and then brush my teeth? No, I should brush my teeth and take my medication and then set coffee. So it doesn't just feel like a very simple act of, I should go to bed now. There's like 20 steps between turning off the TV and going to bed that feel very overwhelming. So it's like, nope, next episode. So context switching, decision fatigue, time blindness are all going to play a role. So the EF skills that we'd want to bring in are naming the fantasy of what an evening would look like. So that's the task awareness, prioritizing that based on different values. That will help us define what's enough. That's our third skill. Do I need to do this every day? Do I need to do it every week? For how long? And we can use that to bring in a lot of, I'm speaking kind of broadly now myself, but EF strategies to help reduce the decision fatigue and create a very specific, real routine around going to bed. And then we can also talk about the emotional piece as well. Would that answer your question? Yeah, Della.
I would say too, thinking about the difficulty in transition, we talk a lot about different resetting strategies. Like if I'm moving from one thing to the next, how do I actually pull myself out? And this example we're living in of like sitting in front of the TV, is it like the entropy baby, like an object at rest stays at rest, right? And like I'm just in the current of the TV right now. Really hard to imagine not just the like little steps that I'll need to take to physically make it into bed, but like that's a harsh transition from watching something stimulating into bed. And so thinking about different ways of building in parts of the routine that help us unwind before expecting ourselves to sleep. Like personally, recently developing a habit of like reading in my bed as like a way to kind of soothe that transition into sleep. So, Kasryn, I'm sure you have a wealth of information there, but that's the way that I've thought about it in the EF realm. And I'd be curious to hear your thoughts there too.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Yeah, most of my work is really focused on looking at chronotype when we're talking about this sort of problem. Are you naturally a night owl? And trying to force it to be earlier creates a lot of issues, even with a great executive function. If someone who has maybe more of a typical schedule, 11 to 7, tries to get into bed at 7 p.m., even if they have everything taken care of, they're not in the ribbies, they're going to not be able to sleep very well if their natural preference is later. But also, I think what you're saying, both of you said, is so important to help. So transitioning tasks, and all the points that you beautifully hit on, I think is all really important too. There's a lot of research showing. The research calls it revenge bedtime procrastination. I don't know if I love that, but that's what they've chosen to,
Yeah. I
to
think
call that.
like add on to Della's really, really strong point. One of the strategies that we talk a lot about in all areas of transition and context switching is moving from something really enjoyable and yummy to something hard is always going to be difficult. And it can feel like going to bed is sort of the punishment. It's like, all right, fine, now I've got to go to bed. And so we have a strategy that we call it dopamine slathering. So something else we might want to recommend is saying when I turn the TV off, I get to play my favorite song and make it like a yummy cup of tea and put on comfy slippers. And the dopamine helps it not feel like so much like a punishment, but is also the chemical in our brain that tells us to start doing something. So it's like kind of conveniently nice that it feels good. But for people who have a lack of dopamine due to neurodivergence, creating that dopamine with the fuzzy socks and the heating pad and the tea and oh, now it feels good is gonna help. Look at both of you like smiling and head moving. We're like, can I do this now? It's
Well,
gonna
I'm thinking about like putting in my AirPods, listening to my podcast as I go up to brush my teeth, right? That just like I'm gonna enjoy this next step of the process. Yeah.
when you manufacture it to feel good, it feels good. So that's great. But it literally, it's like connects our amygdala and frontal cortex and goes, hello, we're doing this now. And so it's kind of a win-win. So I would just add that on to what Della was saying as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that can kind of create this reinforcing cycle, that classical conditioning or Pavlovian conditioning, thinking back to Psych 101, where we're training that the bed is a place of coziness and rest. and safety. And that just kind of becomes a reinforcing cycle. So very cool. Well, with just a minute left, anything that you want to make sure that you touch on, any questions from anyone, you could put it in the chat before we wrap up.
No, I think I would just want to thank you again for inviting us to speak. Absolutely, Daisy. And I just would say again, not to overstate it, how much we value collaboration, because as we've talked about this, the client presentation is complex. They often don't have, by no fault of their own, we just culturally don't have language around the complexities of executive functioning and neurodivergence and mental health. And so making connections and talking to you guys as an audience is such a critical part of helping support our clients. So, just thank you.
Absolutely. I'm so glad that we got to meet so that I can, better support clients who need this kind of help and really benefit from it. So thank you. All right. So we'll wrap up.
See everyone on Friday, right? Come to Kasryn's talk.
Yes. Yeah. Come on Friday if you haven't registered already. I'll put a link in the chat really quick before we hop off. And I hope everybody has a really good night. And give me just a moment to put that link in there. Or if one of you has it, you can pop it in there.
Oh, right. It's our link.
Yeah.
I'm just smiling, staring at the screen. Let me see.
Sorry. I will get that going. Sorry, guys.
Yeah, I have it in my
here we go.
folders.
Yeah, there it is. Okay, it's in the chat.
All right. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Thank you. Have a good
Great.
night.
Take
Bye.
really good care. Good night.